Grab your Bible and a Diet Mountain Dew because it's time for the Brother Byron podcast. Listen in as Brother Byron brings you thought-provoking insights from his 30-plus years in the ministry. Now here's Brother Byron.
Hello, friends. This is Brother Byron with another Brother Byron podcast. It's Thursday, December the 26th, the day after Christmas, 2024. Hope you had a great Christmas. We certainly did. Had the family over. We all ate a lot of food, spent a lot of good time having fun and opening gifts. Of course, before we opened gifts, we read the Christmas story from Luke chapter 2 of the Bible. I always want to make sure we always do that. It's been a tradition in our family forever. So we had a really good time for Christmas. It ended awfully fast, and kids went home, and there we are, just in that time after they're gone. But, it had me thinking about this time that I'm off right now. I've told you several times that I have 12 days off in a row during this, what we call the Christmas season or holiday season. And I was reminded of something Pastor Sexton said during my seminary days. He said, never neglect your family. Your duties to your family should never conflict with your work for the Lord. That was a truth that I really needed to hear, but I needed to hear it a little sooner than I did. I'm afraid that I went many years putting the ministry really first. Now, I've been so far in the ministry around 30 years and different things as pastor, as just a preacher, as a music minister, Sunday school teacher. I've done many things over the last 30 years, and actually more than that. Even from a teenager up, I was singing in gospel groups and doing things at the church. But, as far as ministry is concerned, about around 30 years. I've been married for almost 40, coming up March 15th of next year, this coming year. Mary and I will be married 40 years. We have 3 grown children. Our oldest will turn 32 this coming year, our son 28, and our youngest daughter will be 25 years old. So they're no longer children. But as I was reflecting back upon the time in their earlier years, I realized that I really spread myself way too thin when it came to ministry and family. So there's a fine balance there that you have to find. Like Pastor Sexton said, family and ministry should never conflict. In my earlier years, I was working a full-time job, which I still am, pastoring a church, and, we call it bivocational or part-time, but it's actually a full-time job, and we're on call 24/7, 365 days a year. So it is a full-time job, also pastoring. I was also attending college several of those years, earning degrees, and, later on seminary. I went through 2 different ones. So, on top of all that, I was preparing 3 sermons a week, a Sunday school lesson every week. Also, most of that time I was leading the singing at the church as well as pastoring. I fulfilled many positions of whatever needed to be done. I was doing it. So I was constantly busy and going on visitation, preaching funerals, whatever needed to be done. I was out there doing it. Plus I was studying for exams, tests, sermons, a lot of stuff there. Plus trying to do my everyday duties as a husband and a father. Vacations were, they were rare. When we did get to go on a vacation, it was most of the time it would get interrupted by church responsibilities. Either someone was put in the hospital or maybe someone passed away and we'd have to come in from our vacation. So our plans were a lot of times abandoned And of course, that is disappointment for our family, especially younger kids. Very disappointing when you tell them, look, guys, I know we had this week planned to do this and that, but, someone has passed away at the church. And so I'm going to have to go and, handle that. And I know that was very disappointing for our children. And I admit I could have done better. There's no one else to blame except for myself. Um, I guess when it really hit me, realizing what I had been doing was when my youngest daughter, I don't remember how old she was at the time, but she said, Dad, all you do is work at church and for church people. And that really was kind of a wake up call that I needed to try to do better. Of course, by then, many years in the ministry with kids, they were already getting older. And so we'd lost a lot of valuable time and things that we could have been doing together. Now, by early 2018, I came to a point where I was actually dreading the ministry. I mean, everything was going really well at church. Actually, the church was thriving. People being saved. We were adding missionaries, supporting many missionaries. We added on a prophet's chamber there at the church so that we could have missionaries come and stay, and traveling evangelists and preachers, they could come. But it all started beginning to feel hollow, or I don't know, distant. And I prayed and prayed and I wrestled with it so many times and for quite a while. Just this uneasy feeling that I had. And I felt like, is he leading me away from the church? Am I supposed to continue pastoring here at this church, or is the Lord wanting me to do something else? I struggled with that because my intentions were to stay at that church for all my life. That was a church that my grandfather had established. He'd been the pastor there two different times for a total, I believe, of 9 years, or 11 altogether, maybe. I can't remember right now, but our family had so much history there, and I love the people. The people love me. It was really the perfect setup there. Good church. And I was just so puzzled of why in the world would God lead me from there. Resigning from that church was the hardest decision I'd ever made in my life. And Mary and we talked about it, and I'll admit you, I probably stayed a little too long, knowing that God was really telling me my time was up there. But it was so hard to determine, is this God's will or is this mine? Is this something that maybe it's just an easy way out because I'm, stressed, or because there's just too much to do? But I knew eventually God was calling me to do something else and to lead. I'll never forget the Sunday that I resigned. No one knew except for my wife and my mother. I had told my mother beforehand. And I got up there that day and I had it all typed out, what I was going to say. And there was just a moment before I started telling everyone that I questioned, am I really doing this? And it just started, all of a sudden, I just started saying it. And it was almost like an outer body experience. It was like I was way up here looking down on myself saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you doing? And the words just kept coming out, telling people that I was resigning. It was tough. I mean, but I worked out a 2 week notice there. I stayed on for 2 weeks, and also we were living in the parsonage that the church owned on the church property. So they gave my family and I plenty of time. We had all the time we needed to move our things back to our house that we own, the one I'm in right now. It had been sitting empty for 8.5 years. A lot of repairs that had to be done. A lot of things have been neglected. So there was a lot of work to do, plus moving all of our stuff back to our home. And we did all that. And I had no intentions on taking on another church or another ministry. I was just waiting to see what the Lord would have me do. I knew there was something out there that he wanted me to do. I just was not sure exactly what it was. Now, I had other people asking, if I'd be interested in pastoring at this church or that church, and there was people always calling me, wanting me to go somewhere and preach or to pastor, but just nothing seemed quite right. Um, and I even told the church that when I resigned, I have no plans to pastor another church. Well, it wasn't too long after I had resigned, we'd moved back home, that the Lord was dealing with me. He's stirring my heart. And, as Jeremiah said, his word was in mine heart as a burning fire shut up in my bones, in Jeremiah 20:9. And that's the way I was. It was a fire shut up in my bones, and it had to come out. I just wasn't sure exactly what I needed to do. So I felt that the Lord was prompting me to begin my own ministry or my own church. And so my wife and I, we prayed about it, and that's exactly what we did. We began our own home-based church, a church like, they first where people met in their homes and was taught scripture and worship together. And so that's what we started doing. I established Porch Light Baptist Church, and we held it here in our home. We had a spare room that we set up for a church. We had chairs, had piano, uh, pulpit, a podium, everything that we needed for a church. Had live streaming equipment, everything. And so that's what we began doing. We were having church here, inviting people to come, and whenever they could, or if someone wanted to join with us. And that was in 2019 in September. And everything was going really good. We were going to nursing homes and singing and ministering to folks there, the residents, and we would go to other people's homes, whoever would invite us, who wanted us to come out to their house to be a blessing to them. And so everything was going really well. Actually, we broadcasting on sermon audio, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. And then COVID hit. They call it COVID-19 because it began in 2019. We didn't see it here in the U.S. until early 2020. So around March, February and March is when we first started hearing it happening around here in the U.S. And people started getting it and getting it a lot. And people started dying fast. I mean, this stuff, it really took off, the China virus. Well, because of that, the nursing homes shut their doors. They wouldn't, no one could go in and minister there. Nobody wanted visitors to their home. We didn't particularly really want people coming to our home that may be infected. And so it really just led us to be our family meeting together at our home after that. And so we were, worshiping here and going, it went well as well. I mean, we're still broadcasting and live streaming and, people listening online and things. But that season actually became a real blessing to us. Um, it allowed us to be together as a family and share together and worship together. And the pressures and constant, ministry demands had really gone away. And so there was a lot less stress. And I really enjoyed that time as we had our own home church. Now, around 2021, the pandemic began easing, restrictions, started loosening. I began taking preaching appointments at different places, all the while continuing into our home church services. So I'd preach at a church on one Sunday, and the next Sunday I'd be back at Porch Light at our home preaching. Go to outreach. I went to Northside, went to churches, and Northside was looking for a pastor. Their pastor had resigned, and they had been just having different men come in to preach. And they did that for 2.5 years. And of course, during that time, a lot of their membership fell off. A lot of people went to other churches that had pastors and left, and so their congregation got really small. But they asked me to come out and preach, and I'd never preached there before. I really knew nothing about the church. I had went to a men's prayer breakfast there one time several years ago, but really knew nothing about it. Didn't know the people, didn't know anything at all. And I knew they were looking for a pastor, but I had absolutely no intention of pastoring that church. And I told them that at the beginning. I said, "No, I'm perfectly happy where I'm at. I don't feel like God's leading me here." And so, they knew right up front I was not interested in pastoring the church. So I don't believe they were actually looking at me to become pastor. And certainly I was not either. I had, like I said, I had no intentions of doing that. Um, However, after I had been going there and helping out for probably a year and a half, I, uh, I could feel the Lord drawing me. I love the people. Uh, they believe the way I believe. They're good people. It's a good, solid church. Lots of good history there. A beautiful place, to congregate together. And so I told Mary, I said, "Look, I feel like the Lord is lead me to go there." But I decided I was not going to say anything to anybody at the church about it. As far as they knew, I was not interested. And I told Mary, I said, what I'm going to do is going to pray. And if it's the Lord's will that I pastor that church, they are going to have to ask me, knowing that I've already told them I wasn't going to. I said, so if it's the Lord's will and he wants me to go there, then they're going to have to ask me. And if they ask me, I'm going to agree that I will, I would possibly accept it if they, wanted to vote me in. And I felt like that was the confirmation of God's will, if that happened. So in October 2023, to make a long story shorter, Northside Baptist Church unanimously voted me in as their pastor. I've been there now for a year and 2 months. And I tell you what, it has been so quick this time that I've been with them. It's so fast. And it's amazing how God works. Now, here for all my life, the church I'd previously pastored was Highland Baptist, before Porchlight Baptist, and that was the one my grandfather founded. And all my life, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be there. I wanted to pastor that church. I just felt like that's where I belong, where the Lord wanted me, that, was part of me, is part of my family, part of my blood. And I just never really felt like anything would be even close to that. Well, it's amazing how God works. Little did I know when I went to preach at Northside the first time that I discovered that my great uncle, Adriel Hall, who actually led me to Christ in 1972, that was back when he pastored at Elm Street Baptist Church, which is exactly 3/4 of a mile from Northside. My uncle Adriel pastored Northside from 1945 to 1950. And during those 5 years he was at Northside, they had the greatest growth that they'd had since they had been established. And they were running like 250 in Sunday school back in that day. So I found that out, and I also found out that my grandfather, the one that had established Highland Baptist, he had preached at Northside many times in revivals. I found old newspaper clippings showing to my grandfather how he was the evangelist for the revival at Northside. He'd been there many times. And turns out that Northside Baptist is where my dad first came under conviction that he was lost and needed to be saved. Now, he didn't get saved at that time while he was there. He was there for revival meeting and was convicted in his heart about it, but got saved afterwards. And that's where he first fell under conviction. So Uh, the connections that God had in place there for me that I had no idea of. I mean, up until they called and asked if I would come and help them out while they were looking for a pastor, I knew nothing about the place. And then to see how God weaved all this together the way that he did, it's amazing when you follow God's will, how he works things out. Now, I don't know how long God will have me at Northside. My prayer is to serve there faithfully until the day that I die. However, I have learned to, hold my plans loosely and just follow the Lord's leading. I'm not looking to leave there. I love it. I love the people. I love that they love the same Bible I love, the same gospel message. They believe it the same that I do. And I have no intentions of going anywhere looking for anything else. But like I said, I've got to always be sensitive to God's will. We don't never need to put ourselves in some kind of box over here thinking, well, this is the way it's going to be, and that's it. We always need to make sure that we're listening to the Lord. Now, this whole podcast, the really reason I had it on my heart was thinking about what I started out with about family and the ministry. Now, like I said, all my children now are grown. So it's my wife and I that travel to the church together and we do things together nowadays. But to young preachers who may be listening to this, if you didn't turn me off already, I want to offer this. If you're married and you have a family, don't put the ministry before them. And I know that's hard because we know that, the ministry and the gospel is like the most important thing in life. Understand that. Sharing the gospel is the most important thing. Loving God's the most important thing. But your family must come before ministry. I'm not saying you love them more than you love God, but I'm saying the ministry. And there's a difference between loving God and working in the ministry and trying to be successful in the ministry. Do not put the ministry before your family or your wife. Now, scripture commands us in Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. So if we're going to love our wife the way that Christ loved the church, that means sacrificially. That means we would give ourselves, we devote ourselves to our wife the same that the Lord did for the church. And, there's a truth in that saying, happy wife, happy life. So watch out for that. Make sure that you always put your wife first. And the Bible tells us in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, you can't train up your children if you're not present in their life. You've got to be there for them. Don't do the mistakes that I've done where I've interrupted our vacations, where I've put off things because church came first. Put your family first. Put your children first. You will not regret it, but you will regret the day that you look back and you say, boy, I missed out on so many things because I put the ministry first. Look, the ministry is always going to be there. And as hard as it is to hear, there's always somebody to work in the ministry. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be you. I know that's hard. That's tough. But while the ministry is important, it's going to be there. But the time that we have with those that we love is fleeting. And don't let it slip away. That time with your family is the most precious. Don't let it come down to your last days and have regrets that you spent so much time trying to be successful in the ministry that you neglected your family. It's not worth it. And God's not honoring someone who is neglecting his family. So that's what I had for today, and hope it's been helpful. let's see, tomorrow is Friday. Not sure when the next podcast will be, but you just if you've subscribed to everything, they'll let you know when the next one is. But until then, this is Brother Byron, and I'm out.